Hi, welcome to the first of hopefully many podcasting series from the Freedom Uprising Network. The Freedom Uprising Network is an opportunity for the natural law community, the onegreatworknetwork.com. If folks want to learn more about what natural law is, you can also check out whatonearthishappening.com for that. It's basically an opportunity for the natural law community to network with other truther and freedom communities, as well as gain funding for projects and businesses. And so, what sort of started this all was that and just to introduce myself first and foremost, which I didn't do, my name is Jerry Cabazzuto. I am the founder of Soundpath.org. I'm planning an in-person festival/conference with freedomundernaturalllaw.com in 2027. And so because I'm already looking for funders and sponsors for this in-person event, it just made sense to share whatever donors and sponsors that I connected with the natural law community and with adjacent truther and freedom communities. And so that's what we're essentially doing here today. If folks want to briefly introduce themselves, and feel free to talk about what projects you're working on if you feel so called to do so.
Hi, I am Soul Expression, and I am working on the Inner Storyteller as a project. The Inner Storyteller is essentially a philosophical framework that can further inform educational programming and child-facing, like children's books and things. But essentially, it is a moral, ethical framework that can further the philosophy on what's right and what's wrong in many different ways.
Sarah, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Sarah Cross. I'm a radio show host on Revolution Radio, Time Strider Radio, where I try to primarily focus on history and, spirituality, like why all of that matters, and actually the things it teaches us on how to behave properly, like morally and ethically practicing human beings, and why history is so important to understand. But primarily my main goal is producing a digest magazine, which I produced a full year of as of last year, and I'm starting on the next year, this year, called the History Project Digest Magazine, that is designed to feature articles that I write about history that I think is important to understand. And I try to feature other and encourage other people who like to write, whether it's an article of some kind or allegorical tale or something to that fashion, and get people to, put more writing out there, because I think books are the thing that lasts, that they stand the test of time, as history proves to us. So that'll last for thousands of years, hopefully, and something that can even children can learn from, because that's where we really need to get, is the children to understand their history so that they don't make the same mistakes. So that's mainly me.
Excellent. And Sarah, can you share your link URL, and then Soul, if you could also do it after Sarah, and then we can go on to Nick.
Share it where?
Oh, sorry. I meant, can just say what your URL is so that people listening to this recording can find your work.
Oh.
And I can while you're pulling that up, Sarah, if you want.
I guess it's just I don't know how to say it, Jerry.
Right. So we have your link tree way, right?
General Time Strider Radio. You can find her work.
That came out a little jumbled because two people were talking at once. So I didn't understand what you said, Nick.
I was just jumping in to help out. Sarah's work can be found if you search for Time Strider Radio rather than a specific URL, I'm assuming.
Oh, right. I mean, people can go to YouTube, but I can get the link tree that has all the things for you, Jerry.
Yeah, and I can also include it in the show description, but it looks like it's linktr.ee /Sarah_Cross, CROSS, correct?
Yeah, that sounds right. And then that's all the links for all the different things.
Nice.
Thank you,
And
Nick, too.
My bad. And my link tree, or my website is the same thing. It's a link tree, linktr.ee /UFULUCHILD. It spells Ufulu child. Ufulu means freedom. So UFULU child. So linktree /Ufulu child is my website.
Excellent. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Nick Haslam. I'm the founder of Hum Hive, which can be found at hum.earth, HUMM.earth. Hum Hive is an agent-centric peer-to-peer technology which allows creators to create, store, share with choice without interference so that we can start to get content out there to the world and share it with each other without it being censored and to go beyond platforms. So it's set up on your own terms. And I am also a content creator and a student of natural law. And my channels can be found if you search for Cosmic Surfers. And I do not yet have a website for that. But if you, I'm currently on YouTube, BitChute, and Odyssey.
Does anyone else want to introduce themselves? Okay, I want to also briefly shout out to Leo, who's in our group here on this recording, because I do a lot of work with him. We're sharing equivalentics, which is a simplified form of quantum mechanics that is not in its full understanding by humanity yet. So we're sharing that knowledge to support humanity's evolution. And we're also building a YouTube channel. And let me get the... because we have, it's Nerro, NERRONGT on YouTube. And people can also find those podcast series on GodIsLoveTruthFreedom.com, which is my podcasting website. And anyone else want to talk about more about that or anything before we go into our talking points? Awesome. So maybe we can, this happened very organically. We were discussing today, my original vision for this group was to just workshop people's pitches, hone business ideas, etc., and just build connections amongst each other. But what ended up happening was that really great conversations happened, and I started seeing this less as a networking and fundraising option and more as a mastermind where perhaps we can share wisdom with humanity so that whether it's through Freedom Uprising Network or a network that you, the viewer, choose to build, we could share ideas with you on how you can build networks yourself. And so we had a lot of really great ideas, one of which was, in my own sort of networking journey, I think a lot of us are sort of doing our own projects, our own podcasting series, but if there's a way that we can share resources with each other, but then, beyond that, if you're a sort of newer content creator, or if you're just starting off in your content creation and get 3 YouTube strikes, which happened to me, it's really hard to like kind of break out from that shadow banning space. And so one thing that I've been thinking about doing and have implemented to some degree of success is going into other networks, other communities, and building relationships with the influencers in those communities, so that one doesn't necessarily need to rely on building a following on one's own, but rather, just spreading the message and focusing on the message, and how that can be spread through other people's networks. What are people's thoughts on this idea?
I think that's great.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
our whole mission in this space is to leave behind material for people to use earlier than we were able to, and more complete and more holistically than we were able to when we're gone from this earth. So I love that idea. that's this idea is completely aligned with, I would say, our objective in this, what we call natural law space, natural law community. I also will say that to back up what Jerry just explained, the conversations that we were having were of actions not only that we think people should take, but that we are attempting ourselves already, and rooted in experiential feedback from our fellow human beings who we are reaching out to and trying to connect with, who don't have the grammar of this knowledge, who don't have a way to articulate some of the things that they see are imbalanced in the world, that they want to do something about and feel powerless to approach. So what we are doing here, by way of sharing, hey, my idea is to get some land and to use that land not only for things like permaculture, but also spaces that people can come together and share expressions via artistic and or non-artistic mediums that spread the message of truth, messages of truth that help align people with truth. And at the end of the day, feed people, which is, I think, the most basic thing we can do for each other in a time of, imposed scarcity. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
I'd also like to add that it's also in alignment with history. Anybody who studies history understands that there are patterns, and there's a phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the pattern in history is that the way people are educated and the way people learn stuff is through actual physical practice and through apprenticeship of learning how to do skills and learning how to do, like, just learning this information at all. And a lot of that's all apprenticeship based and in practical practice terms of doing them, not just theorizing it from like books. They actually did it, and our ancients learned this way and they taught this way. So I guess this is just the modern version of that.
To touch on the point specifically that Jerry mentioned around YouTube and things like that, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is going beyond these platforms, because I have done an extraordinary amount of research and direct experience in this field with what I'm building. And platforms by their nature will not work, not any of them, no matter how much people say that they are going to provide a solution that will not be censored. So leaving one platform and joining another platform is not going to be a solution. So I invite I really like this talk, the point that Jerry brought up about creating solutions beyond YouTube and kind of relying on an audience being in one place, because you need to have that direct connection and the list and the audience all in your own stewardship outside of any one platform, because legally, financially, and whatever it is a system which is designed where there's friction points and attack vectors which will not work by design.
So let's write more books and put them on shelves.
And put them on the blockchain. I think decentralization has been a core theme in a lot of the most recent, very powerful natural law online conversations, is some sort of decentralization. And blockchain, I guess, is just a term, but some sort of blockchain, right? Some sort of thing that's not where you can set your own encryptions and things and share and network on your own, and it's not relying on centralized data, but actual consensual, like what the internet should have been from the jump or whatever. And these types of conversations are happening these days, and it's very inspiring to me. And so I think a part of this whole thing, coming together, talking about we need funding for this, we have to brainstorm these ideas and see if something can move, I think would include, and I think some of our conversation today implied that it will eventually include decentralization, methods to get our stuff out there, but permanently, where it's not, they can't censor you.
What are some other ideas people have in terms of like as a sort of mastermind group? How can we inspire people to build their own networks? One thing that I mentioned in our talk before we started recording is finding allies within the target audience. So for example, if you are targeting your message toward the Gen Z demographic, then you should befriend people in that demographic, especially influencers, support their projects, and build alliances that way, so that you're getting data and feedback from that demographic to hone the messaging. As an example, so like going to, if you're going to target Gen Z, going to college outreach events, if you're a parent, or have a relation or a friend that's in that demographic group, like working with them. How else can people build networks with their target audiences?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't really put people into, I guess, classifications like that. To me, everybody's just people. And I like the method of just talking to random strangers on the street and whatever, wherever, even on the internet. But I'm as somebody who has a background in community building, I just brought in everybody. So to me, it was kids, elderly people, middle-aged people, rich people, homeless people, whatever. That didn't really matter. And with that, it was just like a community. So that was one of the things, because I don't understand I know other people are more, I guess, up to date, more modern than I am. I couldn't even tell you what generation I am. I'm I don't know. I grew up with, I'm an 80s kid. That's about as far as I know. So I kind of go with the method where I will just randomly pull in anybody. It's not really, because to me, it's like just about rebuilding the community, no matter who's in it.
Does anyone else have other thoughts they want to share?
Yeah, I'll jump in. And I didn't think I was going to have anything worth sharing, but here I am. So I guess I'll just introduce myself. I go by Seth of Light. It's just the character I play, just the new direction in life. My real name is Steve, though. I'm a potential investor and open to co-collaborators. I'm currently traveling, exploring places to invest in land and basically learn to build. And it's a reinvention of this path in life. But anyway, that's a whole story, a backstory. But when it comes to going from fragmentation to unification, yeah, super important as far as finding adjacent groups that are recognizing what's going on in history. And I think when it comes to, say, reaching a target audience, one area has to do with art itself. And I'll add that I play the drums, and I'm open to forming an acoustic band. Um, I'm seeing that there's a big void in the music industry, and it is being filled at this point in time with like 33 and all these different conscious artists. And this gets into your event that you're going to be hosting. And so pretty much it's creating art that's appealing to the target audience. My interest being Gen Z. So yeah, I guess that's one way to go about it, is learning about taste in music or whatever kind of art and catering to that. Unfortunately, it kind of sounds like it's like selling out, but that's just how it is, right? With everything, when you're talking about market and marketing and all of that.
No, yeah, pattern recognition. Like you said, taking a brief look or very detailed look at what are the triggers, and utilizing the science of familiarities and whatnot, utilizing the of psychology to spread a message, not to brainwash or you must believe the right thing, but just to appeal to the triggers that you recognize as patterns, because we are competing for their attention. Yeah, man. Awesome.
Yeah, and sort of I had mentioned this before we started recording, but in addition to networking with other truth and freedom networks, whether it's other conferences like Confluence, like Exit and Build, like the People's Reset, like, PorcFest. In addition, I'm doing, college outreach with my friend Corey Andrelot. We're also doing street activism work. And just by sheer quantity, we end up meeting influencers within the community through doing those street activism sort of activities, work. But yeah, also just thinking about adjacent truther communities. And I had mentioned before we started recording, like when I'm working in the ET research community, I'm thinking about, okay, well, if my objective is to spread natural law, the talking point should be, all right, well, if you guys are familiar with ET contact, like if you want to make more contact with other benevolent civilizations, like you have to be moral. Like they're going to want to interact with people that are moral objectively. So that's sort of the talking point that I have with them, with the college kids. Like, hey, I'm doing a fun music festival, whatever. So just like, or like, for college, like they're going to go into a lot of oftentimes debt for their education for a field that they may not necessarily be passionate about or whatever. So, just sort of showing them that they don't need education by an institution to gain experience and to grow into adulthood independently. So stuff like that.
I'm kind of thinking that another thing that's important about this kind of where we're thinking about how do we successfully blend the truth back into the story, if you will, of the institutionalized mind. I mean, and I speak poetically sometimes on accident, but basically, I mean, how do we get the info into the schools, into the businesses, into the NGOs, and into the government even? Like, how do we get morality back into the picture everywhere? And if things dissolve once it's there, then great. Hopefully it's aligned with truth. But regardless, how do we get it in the things that do exist and do influence how we treat each other, right? So with my work, for instance, I talk about how I really have this larger vision to one day have this work really influence the educational space. What I mean by that is like I come from a background of helping teachers teach better. I was working with this group called Mind Pop, and they had this thing called the Creative Learning Initiative, and we would go to PDs to personal development to where they're off of school, but the teachers come to school to do some sort of thing. They're PD, and I would do this session where I would teach them creative learning strategies, how they could use artistic, creative learning strategies to teach any unit of their curriculum, or any part of a unit of their curriculum, especially if they're going to like read a book or do something specific. And even like math and like making songs and things. So using art. My work can do that, right? Can come in as the moral side of classroom management, administrating, team morale, counselors, as far as counseling, every school got counselors, all of these things, all of these educator facing. And then, of course, obviously, adding things into history class, adding things into science, adding things that connect with that connect natural law and the inner storyteller framework, how we assign meaning in life, to these things that we're learning, because it's a missing piece, right? It's heavily theorized that is very intentional that everything was separated from morality in the classroom, like how it's taught, that was by design. But whatever. I want to address that gap, and I want to put morality into everything.
A lot of what you said made me think about how, humanity's condition has been socially engineered over millennia. And if that's the input, we have to essentially output a sort of de-engineering or deprogramming, right? To sort of move out of that. And so I'm thinking about, well, how did we get here? Firstly, we got here through our flawed education system. We got here through marketing, the culture. So we got here through, music, the industry, right? Through sort of an emotional engineering, right? And so there's different ways that we all kind of came into this. And so we have to use these ways to get out of it, I think. What are people's thoughts on this idea?
Yeah, I do think that's the case. We've got to use those tools that are currently available on this planet to us, that we could utilize if we really wanted to. Because it doesn't really matter who's using the tool. Really, a tool is just a neutral, non-committal object. So how you use the tool is entirely dependent on the person that you are as an individual. Like the difference between using a fork to eat your dinner versus using a fork to, you know, attack somebody. Like it's the difference. This is just what tools are, no matter what they are. So this is why I appreciate how books work, whether they're physical, digital, audio, whatever, because I know they're their own thing, and they're always going to be their own thing all the way back in history as we know it and far into the future. So that's why I just appreciate, you know, writing. And with using art, yeah, like, I mean, I grew up being an artist, drawing and painting and all that stuff. And then, you know, but really like, sorry, writing is kind of like always been more my thing. I mean, I guess as the older I get, but letting art be a way to educate, especially the youth, is a very good way to do that, because really, if people understood what art is about, it's not about how you express yourself creatively. Not really. The concept of art is really the science of life. It's the language of, if I'm not to sound like philosophical or anything, but really it's the language of God or source or whatever, that which set all things in emotions, whatever you want to call it. Really, it's the language of how reality functions as a system. And so like for me, art is very important. The way that it should be utilized is not just about creatively expressing yourself, but studying the functionality of reality, both in the physical and the spiritual. And I think that's a very important thing to teach kids, especially kids. I mean, anybody, but so yeah, sorry. I don't mean to rant, Jerry. It's just my thought.
Does anyone else want to add anything?
I'm not sure it's a good idea to use those tools
Why
because
not?
they are being they're very easily corruptible. They give you absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and this is not something that you can avoid. It's just laws of physics, and you need to be very strong in your ability to resist that corruption, and I'm not sure everyone can do it. The vast majority cannot do it. So
That's
these,
why we build a strong youth. Sorry, Lee, go on.
no, yeah, okay. But how strong are you? This is the thing that you need to always kind of consider. Like if it was choosing between feeding your children and sticking to morality, what would you choose?
I mean, in my own personal life, that's been the case where I gave my last dollar to Soundpath.
Would everyone do the same?
Well, yeah, I
Well, to
mean,
answer your question, Leo, I think you raised a good one, right? Like not everyone has that moral strength to like make an unselfish choice, and I think you're right. Like it's as long as we work from a framework of a lack of ego or personal gain. As Sarah said, these are essentially just tools. Like engineering is essentially marketing or influence, and we're just trying to de-influence. But I mean, you make good points, so go ahead, Sarah.
I would just say, well, first, feeding your child is the moral choice because you're a steward of a human being. And when you are a steward of a human being, like I know some people who don't have kids, it's kind of like a different, uh, I know it's a different world. Because I remember being somebody that did not have a kid, but like being the steward of a child and raising that child to be the like a moral and ethical human being to begin with, to me that is like the greatest work anybody can do. And as far as being corruptible, don't raise corruptible children. That means that the steward has to get their thoughts, emotions, and actions, or else they can't function as a normal human being. You just got to get your baggage in order and not like have excuses when give all, lay all your baggage out on your kids. But raising the next generation, that's the greatest work anybody can do, because it's just, that's like, there is no future without the next generation. You might as well call it quits now. If there's no next generation, if people are not creating the next generation, and that means having children despite whatever crap is out in the physical world, none of that matters, because all that stuff's going to stay the same if you do not raise the next generation to be strong, independent, uncorruptible, moral, ethical human beings. Now, that's my stance on it, because like I had to grow up being extremely independent and extremely strong. I learned very quickly how not to get manipulated, how not to get walked all over. Excuse me. It just of course I had to learn those skills growing up, because I had good stewards, but I didn't, always have the right tools in order to do that, the know-how, the wherewithal. And the only way you get the wherewithal is if you have people who teach you the wherewithal, or you just kind of learn it by hard luck, which I did that a lot too. So there's no excuse in my mind. There's really no excuse for people to just become crippled and corrupted and insecure and not be able to hold their own, when we ourselves are the ultimate creation of source. We are so fully capable, and we have all of the tool sets, and all we have to do is utilize it. And building the next generation, I would say, building the next generation into what we're fully capable of being, that's the greatest work there is. That's the most moral and ethical thing that I think a person can do, not just about creating content or writing books or, currency that, helps us be more free, or whatever the case may be. All that stuff is great, but all that stuff is physical at the end of the day. And so the focus, I feel, and I think it is quite moral to feed my children. And it doesn't seem like a logical question to me. And I'm just saying, maybe I'm not seeing the full parameter of the question, Leo. But to me, it's the same thing. There's no reason why a person cannot behave as a moral, ethical human being and also raise their children that way while feeding them and making sure that they're cared for and that they get all of the needs that they require. So that would be, I guess, my stance on it, Leo. If that clarifies my stance a little bit.
I actually gave it as an analogy for scarcity, because the enemy, the one who calls out enemies, it is creating scarcity. That's its source into controlling the people. And when it's going to start fighting this community, as it is getting stronger and stronger, it will create scarcity. People might even lose their jobs in a more extreme situation. Will they stick? If they learn those tools, the same tools that this enemy is using, and they will get to a position of scarcity, will they still use it for good if they're being offered by that enemy to join their ranks?
Right. And I think if one develops a framework of seeing the world, humanity, as in one giant satanic ritual. We're all going to be tested. We're all going to face these satanic ultimatums. And if we can remain objectively moral and strong in our decision making, I think that, but like you said, like maybe it's really up to that person to sort of go through that journey. Nick, I noticed you turned your camera on. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, yeah, that's why I say don't be corruptible, don't be influenceable, and remember that material things in the physical world don't matter all that much, and it's just like you can't take it with you, folks. So stop being emotionally attached to anything physical. Like, you ain't taking it with you. Like, if anything, like, you might come back here in the next life and you're going to get all brand new stuff. So don't worry about it. I would say the answer really to that is pretty simple. First of all, like, you're not corruptible if you have your thoughts, emotions, and actions in order. If you've got your baggage together, you're not really corruptible unless you're just like a psychopath or somebody who's like a secondary psychopath, which I put them in a completely different class. But I think that if people get their baggage together, they're not so corruptible to begin with. And really that takes stewards teaching them how to hold their own. And, really it's kind of a sad state to me that people are giving so much credence. They're giving so much credit to like influencers. And I say also teach your children not to be influenced. I mean, it's just like, don't be influenced by silver and gold. Don't be like, I just think that comes down to insecurity issues, really, and people wanting to fill the void of somebody to, give them the answers when they didn't have any proper stewards to begin with. So that's really where I think it starts. It's like, that's why raising the next generation to be this person in the next, 1,000 years or 100 years or whatever it is, we're going to see a lot less of it because people are actually having kids and raising their kids properly.
Right.
And collectively, like, if enough people are doing that, then it's going to tip that scale. And like, for me, it's like, I can listen to whatever music, read whatever book, watch whatever TV show or movie or whatever, and I can see all of the stuff in it. And even when I was a kid, I wasn't really that influenceable. So I think that as well, like I was saying before, like Jerry was saying, it's about the individual. And there's accountability that goes along there. And at the end of the day, like, people have to take responsibility for it when we can't like baby people or walk them through it. It's like, pick a side, pick a path, pick one. Good luck, and give our children the tools that they need.
If I can add a couple cents, a couple pennies in this context, I love this conversation that's going on, and want to thank Jerry, Leo, Sarah, Seth, Michelle, Nick, a couple other people was here, Bruce, all the people that were here that made it possible. I'm going to say this and then I got to hop off. But I'm going to listen to the responses and then I'm going to hop off. But this made me think of my own story. So my dad just passed this past February. Right. And lost. So, and I've already been a pretty serious philosopher in my humble opinion, but for years beforehand. And so it hit me in a couple of different ways, but it definitely hit the like philosophically trained part of my brain or mental habits. And lots and lots and lots of deep contemplations, late at night contemplations have ensued because of this loss or whatever. And that relationship is way more biological than it is just psychological, right? It's not a chosen necessary thing. And it's also not coming just from my subconscious mind, because there's no reference point to losing your dad, right? You haven't done that before for that to just be resting in your subconscious mind in that way, like it would, eating French fries or something. So, this association mechanism within the whole human being, this bio, psycho, spiritual, emotional, or emo phenomenon or force within us drives our almost capability, like sets the boxes that we must break out of to expand our capacities in life for things like integrity and honesty and consistency and unconditionality of love and these things that we strive towards and will never see perfection necessarily, or we'll see perfection in some interpretations of that word. I know it's a tricky word. Regardless, what all of this comes down to in my point of view, from the parenting side to the educational and institutional mind control side to the drugging side to the fluoride in the water side, and they're making the frogs gay side, all of the sides of the self-induced, the externally induced, the religion induced, the government induced, the blah blah blah, right? Of the things that we must that create the boxes that we must break out of to expand ourselves come down to the stories we tell ourselves about this moment. If you're not telling yourself certain stories, if you have certain key facts that can shatter false stories in this moment, then what Sarah is talking about, the things that influence you from loss and trauma, and I'm a grieving man. This is not an easy loss. My dad is definitely in the hero space as far as my, heart association with that guy, right? But I'm at total peace, and it's done. He's not coming back in the physical. And I wouldn't want him to. Like, he was in pain, It's cool. He good wherever he at. So from loss and trauma to excitement and joy and love and realization and repentance and the middle point between gratitude and sorrow, and like shadow work, reconciliation, all of these things that we grow with in this life as an individual. All of these things are underscored by the story that we tell ourselves about right now. So that is what we aim to teach children about, and teach adolescents and young adults how to master, so that they live their actual like adult life, the part of life where they have some power and some real say-so in this earthly realm. You know what I'm saying? That part of their life is lived with the understanding that the story they're telling about right now, first of all, can be influenced if they let it happen, but is always experienced in story form and you have power over what that story is.
Yeah. So I just want to say I love that. I think that's perfectly said. Yeah. Thanks, Soul, for saying that, because that's what it is. Like there's like it's like if you think you're weak, then you're gonna be weak. If you think you're strong, you're gonna be strong. I love that. I think that's great, Soul. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sol. And it speaks to, knowing thyself as well, so we can go beyond influence as well. I lost my father 10 years ago. He was only 55 and in a lot of pain as well. So I know what you're feeling there, Sol. And I also wanted to touch on the concept of stewardship, whether it's stewardship of story, stewardship of law, stewardship of land, sorry. We talk a lot in the natural law community about ownership, but I feel that stewardship is something that's very important as well. And so this comes back to, relationship with ourselves and the land, and all living beings. And so, there's that individual story that we tell ourselves, the inner storytelling that Sol is talking about. And then there's the stories that are transmitted orally. There's the stories that of our history, this is a way to transmit knowledge and wisdom, and to keep that flame alive. And so, that were a few things. I had some other things to talk about, but that's what comes up from there.
I just want to add before I let the thought die, that we just collectively as a human family can stop believing ourselves so fast all the time. We should just become familiar through reflection and observation how many times you delude yourself. It's a very funny, well, no, depending on your personality, it might not be funny. It might not be cute. But statistically speaking, you delude yourself a lot. I do right now, and I'm very aware of my own thoughts. I taught meditation for 7-8 years. I can be very quiet on the inside, but regardless, it's just a part of, being perfectly imperfect, right? This balanced soul/flesh thing that we do here. We're not going to keep a presence of mind that's strong enough to be honest all the time, but we need to become familiar with how much we delude ourselves and stop being so quick to go with, and I'm not talking about intuition, but just to go with the first ramblings of the mind all the time as truth, and then stick to it when you're called out on your bullshit. That's all.
Awesome. So in sort of closing, since unfortunately we're working in the landscape of short attention spans, I was sort of thinking about sort of the larger sort of themes that came up during our conversation here, where, okay, so as we're building networks, as we're networking within other networks, we should always be mindful that the objective isn't to gain power for oneself, but rather for the advancement of human consciousness. And if people can stay focused on the message and mission rather than how they as an individual can benefit or whatever, I think that is one way that one can combat the sort of relationship humanity has had with power, so that you then sort of dismantle these power hierarchical sort of thinking and just view it just as a way to just propagate the message of truth of natural law forward. Does anyone else have any sort of closing thoughts?
Yeah, add something slight to that is just that, you know, in a non-hierarchical sense, if we do empower ourselves and we do become powerful, then that can be shared outwardly, and then, you know, that also feeds into the collective. So not power in the sense of an egoic part, but we can make ourselves more powerful, and then the collective can become more powerful as well. And then, you know, we can be the influencers as well. You know, I mean, it's up to us to influence others, to have that power within ourselves, to then have the influence, not in a negative way, but in, you know, a natural sense. And then my parting, comment, you know, is also somewhat related to the inner storytelling that Sol's talking about today, which I think is a great theme. But also just self-forgiveness. You know, I think that, you know, the more that we can forgive ourselves, and not brainwash ourselves into, you know, or deluding ourselves or anything like that. But if we can actually move forward in life by forgiving ourselves to, you know, let go of things to move forward, then we have more of a capacity to receive and to be part of this co-creation. And that's something that, you know, maybe I'm saying that because I have some more of that to do, but, you know, I think that that's an important one as well.
I think that's a great point to bring up, Nick, is that I think there's far too many people punishing themselves for the past or whatever past they may have had. And people are forgetting that the whole point of doing this work, I mean, it's one thing to raise the next generation to already have these parameters within them from the get-go, but to help those who didn't have that, I mean, we've got to also teach people that they shouldn't be sitting there punishing themselves forever and ever because they're never going to move forward, and that it's okay to forgive yourself and so that you can move forward. And I think it would be important on that note as well to teach people that or to remind people who are already like in that space that the whole point is to help others develop and grow spiritually into morally and ethical human beings. So to give that space for people to change, because that's the whole point, right? That's how I see what the whole point is to give people the space to change. And I see that happening, like I was talking about before, where I work in the community mostly is where I usually like to work, is I actually see that change happen in real time with people, where I'd be having a conversation with somebody and they're like, no, 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 what are you talking about? Totally rejecting what I'm saying. But then 6 months later, they're like, oh, I kind of get what you're saying now, you know, and I see that. And we've got to be able to, we have to remind ourselves that we need to give people the space to be able to develop and make that change. Because at the end of the day, like we were saying, it's about personal responsibility, personal accountability on how people are going to move forward. So I think that's a great point you brought up, Nick. Thanks.
Does anyone else have any closing thoughts they'd like to share?
You know, there's a lot of attention grabbing going on in the world right now and distractions, and that as dark as it seems and as chaotic and as strong as that involutionary force may seem, the more that we tap into who we truly are and our own magical powers, the more we're going to progress, and that we can absolutely do this. And that I don't entertain for any amount of time that this is not possible or that we're going to lose, because I'm not a loser, I'm a winner. And I'm on Team Winner despite the odds stacked against us. And the answer is always to go within and to do what everyone is talking about at this. But the human, as a fractal of the universe, we have everything that we need inside ourselves to create our way out of this. And we are the solution, and we're all in this together. And we're going to win, not in some kind of just la la land, but we are far more powerful than those forces would lead us to believe. And there's a reason why they are trying so hard to psyop us into oblivion with mind control. And that if we just connect with our heart, soul, essence and express that and come into our own true nature, that is enough. And that we're all enough, and that we're going to co-create the solution together.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.